Okay. First episode back since the U.S. elections, and where our podcast has never felt more relevant or current than right now to me.
Is that a fact?
To me, it feels very much like that. I'm really impressed with his recent staffing choices. He's got the Stephen Miller in there. He's
old Stevie.
Yeah, Mike Huckabee. Mike Palestine doesn't exist. Huckabee, ambassador to Israel. It's looking good, folks. Man, he's sure to end these wars.
Yeah.
Fucking neocon Mark Rubio.
And you covered the elections in our first live stream, right?
For those who tuned in and were brave enough to suffer through the almost inaudible thrown together live stream that we did have fun. That was a little surprise for us and for the patrons.
Yep.
And I think the chat was where it was at.
Yeah.
So, to tell you the truth,
if we do that again, we'll do it again. We'll do it right.
We will do it again. We'll do it right. But we are probably going to have to at least have a nod to that fleshy membrane that was covering the camera.
Yes.
That's the whole thing that became iconic, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're on the other side of that now. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Democratic fascism is a thing. We called it at one point on the show.
We did, yes,
Yeah.
It's true. These ones that we're covering now explicitly said that they're totalitarian, so they're not that kind.
Back to our bread and butter.
bread and butter.
I was having enough of these, establishment types. And,
suit and tie, motherfucker.
Suit and tie. We're going back to some proper freak show, freakery.
Freakery on the Welcome to the Empire Never Ended show.
Hey.
The old WT10.
WT?
Oh, wait, never mind. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to find a new way to fuck up the intro every time.
Oh, well.
I'm running out of ways, but I think I found one just then.
Yeah.
Just confuse the acronym. But this is Tenapod with Boris, Fritz, and Ray.
Hey.
Hey.
And
hello.
And finally, the fucking National Renaissance Party.
They're going to be cursed by God.
We are, actually.
Yes, they quite literally probably would agree with that because
yeah?
the leadership at least had lots of sympathies with Satanism.
This is
I'm saying
the National Renaissance Party is great.
We love them.
I love it. I have to say, because we covered the National States Rights Party.
Yeah, bummer of a party.
They were connected with NRP, and actually, Madole, the leader of NRP, says that Ed Fields, Dr.
Oh, yeah,
Ed Fields,
of course.
One of the leaders of the National States Rights Party, was at some point a member of the NRP.
Oh,
okay.
Until 1954, he says. But these people are so much more fun because the National States Rights Party was like just violence that they did.
Yeah.
Like brutal violence.
Stupid violence.
Yes, and horrible brutal violence that they did. And then we covered, groups such as Liberty Lobby recently, which are more kind of corporate style, political.
Yeah, tied with the GOP and the,
horrible but boring shit and denying the Holocaust and so on.
Right.
And these people are awesome. They're like nerds, Satanists, occultists.
Yeah.
There's violence in this episode. It's all against them.
Nice.
They get beaten up. They get killed.
Great.
It's awesome.
Great. This is exactly what we needed after this, after that fucking all night election we did. We needed a fun one.
The glee on Ray's face when he said they got beaten up, they got killed.
Yeah. Fucking covered in ketchup.
They supported the USSR and Stalinism.
Oh, nice. Okay.
They were into, Helena Blavatsky.
All right.
So it's like,
Yeah, it's shaping up. It's shaping up to some classic Tenapod material.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. Ooh, I missed the old Arc 1 type freaks. I'm glad.
And Arc
NRP's going to bring us back.
as well.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of these in Arc 3.
Arc 5, Arc 7 probably.
Yes.
Arc 4.
Arc 4. Yeah,
Damn. Do we have a type?
we do.
Now,
if I remember correctly, we've been trying to do NRP for a while, but it's kind of hard. The amount of material written on them is
surprisingly, there's no like a book on them or like even a longer article available. There's one written by a guy called William Goering, I think better known as Bill Goering, who apparently was an anarchist who infiltrated NRP in the 60s.
All right.
And spent a few years there with them, doing having responsibilities. At some point, he was their student department because he was the only student in the party, so he was the student department. One guy.
Nice.
And he wrote this text about the National Renaissance Party that has about 20 pages. It was published in something called the National Information Center in the 70s, although it was written in 63.
Okay.
So with the help of, I managed to get this text, and I had great help from one of our patrons. So thank you very much.
Yes.
That's the only text that I know of that's specifically about the NRP. But other than that, I used a bunch of books that have here and there some things about them.
Yeah.
So Kevin Coogan's Dreamer of the Day about Yoki. Has some stuff on them because Yoki was connected with NRP.
Yes.
Possibly was even a member, some people say. Then a similar book to that one is one by Martin A. Lee called The Beast Reawakens, which I think we should get more into at some point. Then The Black Sun by Nicholas Goodrich Clark about Nazi esotericism.
Right.
I also used a book called White Rage by Carol Anderson.
Right.
A text by Jeffrey Kaplan about Madole, Rockwell, and Manson or Mason. I'm not sure, but it's basically the same thing.
Sure.
And I don't know. I also used some writings by Nazis.
Of course.
That I'll mention later on.
Yeah.
One of them is that weird guy from New Zealand, right? Kerry Bolton.
Okay.
Who was a close collaborator of David Mamet.
Yeah.
And an admirer of James Madole.
And possibly had some involvement in some of Pearson's journals after Pearson's time. From our...
Okay. Kerry Bolton was like a proud Nazi Satanist and then renounced the Satanist part and is now a fascist Catholic Christian or Christian for sure, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And also Martin Kerr, that's the current commander of the New Order, Commander number 3. He inherited Kale after he died, wrote some shorter texts about Madole, who he knew personally. I think he was a member of NRP.
Yeah.
And there's a guy writing on Stormfront using the names James Harting. It's actually, James Harting, which is Madole's name.
Yeah.
His name was James Harting Madole.
Okay.
And that's possibly also Martin Kerr, but I'm not sure because the guy writing on Stormfront also knew Madole and I think was a member of NRP or close to them. So he writes some biographical things about him.
Interesting. We haven't had Stormfront for a while.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's true.
Ray also wanted to thank Spencer Sunshine for his help in this research.
So this episode really will be focused on the general history of the party, as little about it that we know, but through the story about James Madole. And then I think I will do 2 more episodes about NRP.
Good.
Focused on different members of the party. The 3 that I will cover in the next 2 episodes, I will mention them now, but I won't talk much about them because I will save that for the other episodes. So this one will be focused on Madole, as I said.
Great. All right, good. Well, man, he's been around. We even talked about him back in the Dan Burroughs, Jewish,
I think that's the first time that they came up. No,
if not it was an early one.
Yeah,
it was an early one.
I mean,
but we've also, they were adjacent to anything ANP related, I suppose, right?
Yes, although they were they had a love-hate relationship with ANP.
Yeah, I know there was a lot. They took a lot of ex-American Nazi Party people in.
Yeah. Well, they were the Hail Stalin type of Nazism, and ANP was Hail Hoover,
Right.
So it's a bit different.
Yeah.
But they still had some interesting context that I will mention.
Okay.
And a lot of shared membership. Like a lot of people went from one party to the other.
Okay.
And so this is also just the early days of neo-Nazism in the US.
Well, I will mention that shortly. Very early days. Actually, there will be a correction to a previous episode we did.
Okay.
So Madole, James Madole, was born in 1927 in New York City. When he was 2 years old, his parents split and his father sort of disappeared from his life, I think, or in general.
Well, there it is.
Yeah.
That was
Hitler
fast.
became his new father.
Yes. So he was raised by his mother, Grace, who was a vicious anti-Semite. As a boy, he was very sickly. He had severe asthma. And because of some climate reasons, they moved to Beacon, New York.
Okay.
When he was a small child. He was a very lonely, unhappy child, didn't have friends at school.
Did he dress in a suit?
I'm not sure. There's nothing on that, but in high school, some kids offered to be his friends, and he was kind of insulted and refused because he thought they were doing it out of pity.
Yeah.
Which is probably true.
I won't join a club that'll have me as a member.
Yes. So you see, he's kind of an angry loner.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, we do have a type.
We do.
Yeah. Madole never had a girlfriend at that time. He had a platonic romance with a school teacher.
Okay. Wait.
At what age?
Wait. Also,
like as an adult or?
No, high school.
Okay. So, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's based on...
I feel like platonic's the wrong word to use there, but I can't entirely explain why.
Well, I mean, a legal romance, I guess, or I don't know. They didn't do anything. They just exchanged letters about literature, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all adding up. It's all adding up to an interesting Tenapod relevant career.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he withdrew more and more into himself, and his only confidant was his mother, Grace.
Yeah.
The virulent anti-Semite.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
she'd gather him around, read chapters of the Elders of Zion.
Yeah.
Stroke his hair. Tell him that Jews control the media, and then put him to bed.
Around that time, he decided he wanted to be a scientist.
Okay. He is on theme.
So he built a big laboratory in his room.
Okay.
And did experiments in chemistry and astronomy.
Okay. So he wanted to be like a rocket guy.
I don't know. He wanted to be like a scientific king of the world, basically.
Oh man. Okay. So we know who he was reading.
I don't know if you've ever seen those chemistry sets, like antique ones from back in the day. They did not fuck around with some kid safe shit.
But that stuff
had a lot of fucking. You could do a lot with them.
That stuff was intentionally out there though to produce a generation of new rocket scientists. That was very intentional. And we know that among many people on our show who had a early interest in rocket sciencery, I think my favorite is of course Uncle Chucky. And I'm getting some Uncle Chucky vibes here.
Oh, okay. All of these people are similar.
Yeah.
So Madole thought as a kid in high school of science in the kind of Faustian terms. So he thought of a scientist as an omnipotent master of the universe.
Okay.
And he thought that the laws of science should be extended to everything, culture and society and so on.
Okay.
And the whole society should be managed scientifically by an elite of scientists.
Yeah, please refer to our previous episodes on fascism and science fiction.
Well, I'm just coming to that because he became a huge fan of science fiction.
Hey!
He used to sign his letters with "Yours for a United Planet."
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
So loner sci-fi nerd with no friends.
Yeah. I'm going to actually specifically call out Seti. If you're listening, please comment on our Patreon what the original UP references. I'm sure other patrons of ours might be able to chime in there.
So he entered the world of science fiction fandom.
Okay.
And I mean, this will sound a lot similar to anyone who had like some connection with the punk scene or back in the day, because a lot of these people functioned in a similar way. They produced zines, and they exchanged zines, wrote letters to each other, and so on.
Cool.
And as Bill Goering says, most of them were kind of leftists, but there was a minority of freaks there who were Nazi types. And Madole connected all of them. Like wrote letters to them, and they enthusiastically replied, and he was very happy and surprised by that.
Just to clarify,
what years are we talking here? What
these are
like
the 40s.
40s still. Okay. And sorry, and he's making these connections through a sci-fi fandom? Or
yes.
Okay, interesting. Really interesting.
His connection with Nazis was through sci-fi fandom.
That's really ties up this part of the arc.
Specifically to one guy who was his kind of mentor in the early days.
Okay.
A guy called Charles B. Hudson, who was a science fiction writer.
Okay.
And a Nazi who was tried at the sedition trial during the Second World War.
All right.
I'm sensing a fash fic episode. Maybe
you might be right. Yeah.
So Hudson at that time served as a kind of a mentor figure, and he connected him to all the Nazis inside of the science fiction fandom and outside of it. This is how young Madole became a Nazi, basically.
Very interesting.
Of course, the mother helped as well.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe mother was a part of some, America First groups or something like that. I'm not sure. There's no information about her, but she was very enthusiastic later on about NRP as well.
Okay.
So in 1945, 45, Madole had an idea to form a fascist party based in science fiction fandom.
Damn.
Wow.
So this is 45. He did it. I mean, it was barely a group, but it existed. So this is a year prior to the Columbians.
Interesting.
Okay.
We do love Madole. I didn't realize how much we love Madole.
Yes.
Damn, he's like right on our fucking track here.
Mm-hmm. So a fascist party based in science fiction fandom, and named it the Animist Party.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. We also talked a lot about animism.
No, I'm not completely clear why they named it this. I think I'm not sure they actually knew what animism was. So a guy called A.O. Titman.
Nice.
That's awesome.
He was a pre-war fascist, like a America Firster.
Yeah.
Who Madole contacted through these connections with Charles Hudson and so on. He suggested the name.
Okay.
And explained that it means something like the spirit of the woods, which is not what it means.
Did they have like a G.R. Assman that was part of it too?
I think we brushed against this version of animism way back when we were talking, in fact, about the birth of psionics in this far-right field.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, animism was one of those branches off of animal magnetism.
Okay.
That kind of went through that direction. So this really is tying it together with lots of stuff.
So that's what happened. They kind of formed this party basically as an idea, but they had trouble recruiting members. So some of the members they had at the time, actually, I mean, it's hard to call them members. They were people affiliated with this idea through this exchange of letters, contacts, and so on. And they would assume functions in the party that didn't really exist.
So did the party have like any kind of like a newsletter or something that they could actually read, or was it just like a pen pal group?
I'm not. They had like, I will tell you now, they had like certain titles and so on, but I'm not sure that much came out of it. I'm not sure. Maybe something did, but I didn't see any evidence of it. So one guy affiliated with the whole thing. So this is a bunch of older people than Madole who are doing this with him. So one of them was from Philly, a guy called William Henry McFarland Jr. He was a publisher of fascist periodicals, one of which was called National Progress. He was also the leader of a group, a fascist group, a pre-war America First group, but more on the Nazi side of that movement.
Yeah, right.
Which was called the Nationalist Action League. And Madole became a member of that group as well.
Okay.
Parallel to the Animist Party that barely existed.
Yeah, right.
So this guy, McFarland Jr. from Philly, became the director of Animist Press Association, which I'm not sure actually did anything. Maybe they did.
Mm-hmm.
And who else is involved in the Animist Party?
Okay, hold on. This is all right. It's somebody that we covered.
Mm-hmm.
This is somebody that we did a whole episode on. You got to give us that much.
Well, not specifically about him.
Okay.
We did an episode on a group that he belonged to.
Okay. Fuck. What years? We're talking 48 still?
This is so the party was organized in 45 and existed, I think, until 47, 8 as an idea, at least. Okay, I'm going to tell you who it is.
God damn it. I can't. I'm running a total blank here. I can't even imagine. Unless it's William Pelly.
No, it's Homer Loomis.
Oh, Homer Loomis.
One of the two leaders of the Columbians.
Yeah.
With Emory Burke.
Okay.
So before he was a Columbian, he was the head of the Animist security police.
Wow.
Which didn't exist.
Wow.
Yeah.
So these are just guys giving themselves titles.
They're complete sci-fi.
I want to be head of the security police.
I will be the astrogator.
Yes. Got a little badge, probably.
Yes, of course.
There's really an interesting thing here, and this is that they were also supported by the mothers groups, which were a part of the America First movement, but the ones that were more Nazi-like, So there were two groups that supported the Animist Party. One was the National Blue Star Mothers of Pennsylvania, which has almost the exact name as another group, which is just called the Blue Star Mothers of the U.S. or something like that, which still exists.
Okay.
But this is apparently a different group. And also a group called We, the Mothers Mobilize. So a person that was one of the leaders of this mothers movement, but more Nazi-like, was a person with a weird name called Laurel Clark von Heining.
Oh yeah, there she is.
Yes,
Laurel Clark von Heining.
Yeah, she was one of the financiers later on of the National Renaissance Party, allegedly.
Did she, by any chance, live around Mar-a-Lago?
I'm not sure exactly where she lived.
Was she a countess?
But you know what she was involved with? The I Am activity.
The I Am activity. There is a Pelly connection. So I Am was the sort of like they came. Okay, I don't want to say they came out of Pelly's movement, but they were sort of like a parasite on it for a while until it essentially sort of took over what Pelly had built from his movement.
They're like an occult, like new age, proto new age group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was influenced by Pelly's weird ideas.
They like straight up built their foundations on Pelly's weird
stuff
ideas
and recruited a bunch of silver shirts.
Yeah.
And this.
It's where silver shirts went to retire, actually. Yes. When they got super old, they ended up.
I think they still exist.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So she was a part of that. Interestingly, her papers are held at Loyola University, and there is like a redacted box of her papers that can be open only in the year 2034.
And only when the full moon has reached its zenith and is peered through a jade fucking tetrahedron.
Yeah.
And then it will unlock.
Maybe this is stuff connected to her relations with neo-Nazis later or something like that. I don't know. So the McFarlane guy that I mentioned, he also was an editor of a newspaper called Common Sense. Which
Common Sense.
A fascist newspaper published by Condi McGinley.
Yeah.
I think they called it, I think its headline was America's #1 anti-communist newspaper, or something like that. It had a very bold...
Common Sense, also, if I recall, had some connections to the TFP, the Tradition, Family, and Property, at one point as well.
So McFarlane was also connected to Gerald A.K. Smith.
Sure.
And Condi McGinley, who was like an important guy in American fascism after the war as well. He was like, sometimes they would say he's Gerald L.K. Smith was kind of the leader and that this was a number 2 guy.
Yeah.
Condi McGinley.
If anybody needs a reminder, Gerald L.K. Smith, we haven't done an ep on.
No.
But he's also one of those guys that's been absolutely everywhere when you're talking about the foundations of, for instance, Christian identity.
Yeah.
I mean, late Klan stuff. I
guess at some point we'll do an episode.
Oh, no.
Not in this arc, I guess.
No, I think we're going to save him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Condi McGinley also had a group called Loyal Americans, a Loyal American group, and he merged that group into the McFarlane's National Action League. which Madole was a member of.
Yeah.
And was closely associated with the Mothers movement, the Nazi.
Right. Lag merges with Now.
McFarlane had a group. I wrote this just for Boris. He had a group in the 1950s called the American Flag Committee, which specifically was made to oppose the flying of the UN flag.
Ah, yay. Excellent.
As we know, the reason why it's for Boris is because Boris is our resident UN conspiracy theorist.
I love the new UN conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, there's they're training out in the Pineys, don't you know?
This woman, Lyle, also published a newspaper which was called Women's Voice, and one of the regular contributors to the paper was Eustace Mullins.
Okay. In Women's Voice.
Yes. The anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist who wrote a book about the Federal Reserve under the mentorship of Ezra Pound, and was an active member of the National Renaissance Party later.
Yes.
And a friend, possibly a lover of Matt Cale.
Right.
Yes.
So by 1948, Madole kind of gave up on the Animist Party. Its ideology, much like the National Renaissance Party, was very elitist. They had an idea, or rather, Madole had an idea, that the masses should give rise, or I think someone in one of our previous episodes used the term emanate or something like that. Individual geniuses who would become part of the governing elite of the society, and would set up technical councils instead of government offices.
Yes.
And this is interesting. Among other things, establish free colleges and old age pensions, and encourage racial pride. So
there we go.
So early on, we see that Madole kind of tries to take seriously the socialist part of National Socialism. He always had this kind of more
like a racial welfare state kind of thing.
Yes, that's Unlike, for example, Rockwell, who started with National Free Enterprise National Socialists or something like that was the first name of it.
Yeah.
So in 1949, 3 groups merged to form the National Renaissance Party.
Okay.
1949.
Yeah.
Some people say that National Renaissance Party was a renamed Animist Party.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard to say what exactly happened there.
I mean, that's probably just because it's Madole now.
Yeah. It's Madole. So the 3 groups were, 2 of which were headed by the same guy, called Kurt Mertig. He was a German American, I think, an immigrant from Germany.
Yeah.
He was the head of two of these groups, both Nazi, part of the America First movement. So these are the groups from the 30s.
Yeah, right.
Citizens Protection League is one, and the other is German American Republican League.
Oh, okay.
Both from New York, specifically from Yorkville, Manhattan.
Yeah, right. All right, Yorkville, Manhattan. We got Kurt Mertig. Mertig.
Yeah, so he was this is like basically the universe of the Bund.
Yeah, right.
He has a group that at sometimes is a rival to the Bund. Sometimes he works with them and even like gets orders from them, from what I understand.
Yeah.
This is in the 30s, of course. And he's also a close collaborator of a guy that we mentioned before called Ernst Elmhirst.
Yeah, Ernst Elmhirst.
Who was the mentor of Emory Burke, the leader of the Columbians.
Yeah.
And Emory Burke and Elmhirst were a part of something called American National Socialists in the 30s and published some things. And both Elmhirst and Mertig were also tried in the sedition trial.
Okay.
So these are like...
These are big shots.
These are Bundists.
Yeah.
Who are the founders of the National Renaissance Party.
I got to say, I'm already surprised by that.
Yeah, that is a little surprising.
I kind of thought National Renaissance Party was like, all right, Madole, he strikes me as like a kind of a basement kid living with his mom, wants to cosplay as a Nazi. And I guess all that is also the case. But in fact, he managed to network some pretty big players in the
You will be surprised even more now.
All right, I'm ready.
Not by this, but... Yeah, okay. So the third group that merged was the previously mentioned McFarland's Nationalist Action League.
Yeah, right.
Of Madole was, as I said, already a member. So these three groups merged and formed the NRP in 1949.
James Madole says,
well, the National Renaissance Party was founded in January 1949 through a merger of the Citizens Protective League of New York, the German-American Republican League of New York, and the Nationalist Action League of Philadelphia. These three groups came together to form a political party at that time, and it has been growing ever since. Well, I was one of three founders, actually, the other two being Kurt Mertig and W. Henry McFarland, Jr. And as for a title, at the present time, I'm the National Director of the organization. We have one advantage, of course. When we formed this organization, it was a merger of three already existing groups, and many of these people were not youths. And they are people who are very stable in their ideas, and they remain consistently so over the decades. Some of these original members are still with us, though many others have died. And many other new ones, particularly now young people, have started to come in.
Are you offended at all by the term the totalitarian extreme right or the totalitarian right in the United States to distinguish your movement, for example, from, let us say, the Goldwater Conservatives or even the John Birch Society rightist movement? Are you offended by the term totalitarian?
No, we use it ourselves.
The first leader of the group was Mertig.
Yeah.
Then, because of some health issues, McFarland actually became the leader of NRP.
Okay.
But then he also abandoned the post, and Madole became the third leader. But this was in the year of the founding, in the 49.
Okay. Tumultuous period.
Yeah. So basically, he was really the only leader of the party throughout its existence.
Yeah.
Until 1979 when he died.
Okay.
Or maybe it existed by 1980, but that's basically it.
It went on, though.
Yeah. It didn't went on. Like
no. I mean, I kind of also thought maybe it was more of a product of like that moment in the late 60s.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
it existed, for a long time. So Yorkville, why were they there? So
because there's a lot of fucking Nazis there.
Yes,
that's why Dan Burroughs liked hanging out.
That's
there.
what they thought. Or I mean, there were.
Yeah, you can go Nazi antiquing there at that time in the 60s anyway. That was what Dan was writing.
So by this point. Madole moved back to New York City from Beacon, and a lot of these people would go to Yorkville because Yorkville was the base of the Bund, but also of the Christian Front of Father Coughlin.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Fuck, right. Yeah, they were training out in the country outside of the city. Yeah. Absolutely.
So basically, NRP's all the members are ex-Bund or ex-Christian Front. There's a lot of Irish fascists in NRP.
Yeah, and that's where they all are,
and German ones as well.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I was just thinking, my family's happens to be German Irish from around that area.
Ah, nice.
By the way, we are not
Grandpa Fritzi was not in the Bund.
No one is clean here because there was a lot of Slavic immigrants who were affiliated with it, and like other European, like Eastern European, Italian, and so on immigrants who had some affiliation with NRP, and they were like kind of interesting because they were like kind of an anti-Anglo Nazi group.
Ah, okay.
There was a lot of like haters of the Brits in NRP, especially the Irish, but others as well.
Okay,
and they tended to affiliate like WASP elite in America with internationalism and Jews.
Yeah, sure. Interesting though.
Okay.
All right, it's a fun take for the period.
Yeah.
You know, especially when it's backed by all these old heads.
Yeah. But I'm guessing the being backed by old heads probably wasn't hard if you're like the first neo-Nazi movement.
Well, yeah.
Then pretty much anybody will jump on board, right? I guess like if you just left, you're just coming out of a period in which the state did do some repression on you, then like if you're still into that kind of stuff, then, you know, you'll join in. Pretty much anybody.
It's a interesting though too because it's a distinct branch that involves people that you would have assumed would have maybe been a little more pro-British, like some of these older people involved in the Klan and stuff. But I guess not.
But this really seems to be like the New York City mix of, you know.
Sure. It's an American tale. Fievel's going to show up in a bit. He's going to run the adorable mouse division. Somewhere out there, a Nazi party I don't know. I don't know what the song is. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
So another guy who was active in Yorkville in the 30s was one that I think we mentioned, that was a Coglonite called Joe McWilliams.
Joe McNazzi. We're very familiar with Joe McNazzi. Yeah.
He was a frequent speaker in Yorkville in the 30s.
And American press loved him because he was called Joe McNazzi, and he dressed the part.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just a very American guy. And I think that's why.
McNazzi.
Yeah. Your average Joe McNazzi.
Yes.
So to speak.
So in 1939, because he thought that the Christian front of Father Coughlin was not fascist enough, so he formed his own group as a kind of a fanatical wing of the Christian front.
Okay.
Which was called Christian Mobilizers.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And some of the Christian Mobilizers would later be members of NRP.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
The Christian Mobilizers also had a political arm, which was called the American Destiny Party. And they would do street meetings in Yorkville, like NRP would do later on.
Right.
Mertig's group was also active in Yorkville in the 30s, and so many of these groups were. But the war kind of put the end to the fascist protests and demos and street speeches in Yorkville. But by 1950, they were active there again. So many of these groups still existed. Like Mertig, at some point during the war, he was ordered by the military to move out of New York City and to move 300 miles away. He had to move.
All right.
By 1950, he was back. And by 1949, actually, when he was the president of the NRP. So other fascists pre-war were again active there. One of them was the already mentioned A.O. Titman, who had his own group, Waters Alliance of Americans of German ancestry. The group was then taken over by none other than Edward Fleckenstein.
Herr Fleckenstein.
Yes.
Finally.
We mentioned him once. I think Cooper, the Pooper, in his History of American Nazism, claimed that Fleckenstein was with Cale and Mullins when they were arrested for molesting a boy or something like that.
Right.
So
plausible.
Yes. There was also a guy called C. Daniel Kurtz, whose actual name was A. Kazimir Kudelski, who revived the Christian Front in Queens.
Okay.
But made it Polish?
I guess. Well, I mean, he assumed the name Kurtz, so I guess not.
And beside there.
Yeah. And he would also, although he was based in Queens, he would also often travel to Yorkville to give speeches and so on. And McFarland would come there from Philly and so on. So Goering concludes that a lot of these people active in Yorkville were actually outsiders who would go there in the hopes of finding Nazis.
Yeah.
And he says that to the day that he wrote this, which was in 1963, Madole had the idea that his politics is widely popular in New York City and Yorkville specifically. Although Goering says that he thinks, and he was a party functionary for some time, that NRP only had 75 to 80 members in the New York area.
Okay.
Although,
I mean, that's more than some groups that we've talked about, but not a lot.
No. But he thinks, Goering does, that they had 10 times more members in California.
Wow. Okay.
But that, as Madole says himself in one interview, the only organized chapter that they, throughout their history, had was in New York City. At some points, they had a few others, but the problem was that Madole didn't allow individual members to form chapters if he didn't know them personally.
Right.
And he didn't know most of these people personally.
That makes it hard.
So they were just individual members who would buy the membership card for $1 through a publication they had or something like that. So,
I mean, did they have yearly conventions and meet and greets so that, Madole could meet other functionaries?
Something like this is never mentioned. It's mostly functioned as a New York City group. The party headquarters was Madole and his mother's small apartment in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Which they had Sunday meetings for the leaders of the party every Sunday.
And this was roughly referenced in the Ryan Gosling film, The Believer, that we talked about a bit, where the Madole type character was played by Billy Zane. So if you're struggling to picture this guy in your head right now, just think of Billy Zane.
Yeah, Madole did not look like that at all.
Okay. So don't picture Billy Zane.
Yeah, do it. Then look it up.
Yeah. He was completely bald and short.
Billy Zane's bald, and he was sitting most of the film.
Okay.
So exactly like Billy Zane.
Okay.
So in their early days, they were like a standard neo-Nazi group, very anti-Semitic, anti-communist. But in early 50s, like in 52 or something like that, they became sort of heretical inside of the neo-Nazi movement. And this is thanks to Yockey. So,
but they were already into the Stalin thing.
No.
Okay, this is when that starts.
This is when this happens.
Okay.
There were two guys who I will talk about in the next episode who were kind of the gray eminences of the party. One was a guy called Frederick Weiss, also a German
White Fred.
Yes,
Right.
immigrant. And another who was not a German immigrant, who we mentioned before in connection with Yockey, that's that guy H. Keith Thompson.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So they were both of them were friends with Yockey and in personal contact with him and would meet him and knew who he was and so on. Madole, for example, didn't know Yockey under his real name. And he was kind of looked down by Weiss and Keith Thompson.
I think you're going to have to refresh us on H. Keith Thompson. I'm getting him mixed up now.
I will talk about him in the next episode I do on NRP.
Yeah.
But he was both Weiss and Keith Thompson were kind of intellectual Nazis from New York City who were active in the 30s. Keith Thompson was allegedly also a secret member of the SS, which he bragged on later on and had some document to prove it. But some people said that maybe it's not real. And he did some sabotage on behalf of the Germans during the war.
Right.
Some boat, like a ship sank or something like that, he said. But continued later on. And he was, both Weiss and Thompson were like the real deal in sense of being the original Nazis, and then later on in contact with high up Nazis who survived the war, groups in Argentina, the ones who were still in Germany, in Egypt, and so on, like exchanging letters, doing things, and so on. And they looked down onto Madole, sorts of being like they thought he was like a funny, crazy guy who's useful for their own aims and to distribute literature, and they could publish texts in the National Renaissance Bulletin, which was the bulletin of the party, and so on. So they thought of him as a kind of a guy that they can direct, which they did in some way. So they would, at this time, we covered this extensively in the Yockey episodes. Yockey would come for some brief time to the US and go back to Europe and so on. And when he would come to New York City, he would meet these two guys. So I mentioned that in the early 50s, I think 52, they kind of expressed a heretical view. And this is when they published a text by Yockey, which was anonymous in their bulletin. And this was Yockey's well-known text, infamous text, which was about the true meaning of the hanging of 11 Jews in Prague. So this is the text that claimed how under Stalin, the USSR is not anymore controlled by the Jews, and how it's a kind of a national socialist, basically.
Right.
Yeah, this is Yockey's kind of outward turn towards pro-USSR stuff. Yeah.
And with the publication of this text, the NRP also goes into this direction and starts supporting the USSR and saying how there is no sense in Europe being a part of America's alliance against the USSR, because this is being pushed by right-wingers who are under Jewish control in America, who push this anti-communism, and Stalin is really anti-Semitic and a nationalist.
Wow. Let me just assign him some points for that one.
100,000 Scrag points.
There we go.
Yeah. So this is now what, NRP is about, and they get attacked by other Nazis for it. So, Rockwell writes how Madole is a communist or supporting communists and so on. But at the same time, he would asked Madole several times to join ANP.
Yeah.
And would send him their internal ANP, like American Nazi Party bulletins, which not even all the leaders of ANP would get, but Madole would get them.
All right.
I mean, it's a pretty edgy take to have in this time period when all you have to do is say you're anti-communist, you can get a bunch of supporters.
Yeah. Sure.
Also, it seems like a easy way to attract unwanted federal attention as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So at some point, so Yockey actually, so some people say that Yockey did become a member of the party. Some say that he officially didn't.
Okay.
But all of the writers that I read who mentioned Yockey and Madole said that Yockey attended party meetings and also participated in their activities like demos and so on. So he might as well have been a member because it is also said that you would become official member if you lived in LA or something like that, and then you send them money and they give you a card. But you actually lived where the party was very active in New York City, then you would hang around, and then after some time they would start considering you a member. So it's not, and it's if you're not a member of the rival Nazi group.
Right.
So basically Yockey was a member, or considered as such. But unlike Weiss and Thompson, Madole, at least he claims, he didn't know Yockey's real name or identity. He used a pseudonym, probably his Frank Healy pseudonym in his NRP activities.
Okay.
So at some point, Madole got a call from Yockey, and Yockey said, listen, we need to meet urgently right now. They met. He said, I had trouble. I have to go to Europe and so on. But I wrote this text, which is not finished. You finish it and publish it in the bulletin.
Yeah.
Which Madole did. So there is this text, I think, called The Destiny of America, which is half written by Yockey and half by Madole.
Okay.
And published in their party bulletin. And in 1960, when Yockey was in the news, already dead, and when he committed suicide in prison, I think in San Francisco or somewhere, Madole says that he was shocked to learn that this was Yockey when he saw his photo in the newspaper.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's because Yockey we talked a lot about during these Liberty Lobby times, Revelo P. Oliver times, like there was some crossover between people who were at least at one point into the John Birch Society kind of scene, but still really liked Yockey and pushed Yockey really hard.
Yeah.
And I feel like those guys, I'm wondering if Revelo comes up here, because I feel like Revelo would find this Soviet stuff kind of anathema. But I'm wondering if maybe it didn't really matter ultimately.
I think that Madole mentions Revelo at the time, but they mention him as, I don't know who mentions him. But at the time, Revelo was still a Bircher.
Okay.
And NRP was heavily targeting Birchers for membership.
Okay.
So there was like, they knew that there were like, although the organization was trying to get away from anti-Semitism, they were like crypto anti-Semites.
Yeah.
A lot of them there. So they were targeting them and trying to recruit them for the party.
But God, like what happens if they, okay. I feel like there's some strange justice to some of this in the sense that like Liberty Lobby guys, we talked a lot about that wonderful scene that we play out in our heads when all the young Republicans show up to the fucking Nazi rally.
Yeah.
I wonder what it's like when all these Birchers showed up to a picture of Stalin,
Yeah, that actually, those kind of things did happen. Like, Ed Fields was one shocked at some point when he came to their. This is when I think this was not the Madole apartment. It was like Mana Truhill's. I will explain his apartment, and there was a huge picture of Stalin there. And Ed Fields of the National States Rights Party was kind of shocked. What the fuck is going on?
Truhill's a mysterious one for us.
Yeah, he will have his own episode. I think.
Okay,
excellent.
Great.
Yeah, we've been waiting for that one for years now.
Yeah. So in the 50s, it seemed they're like expanding a little bit. They started a few other branches in other cities, but they were very short-lived. So in, let me see, this was in Kentucky, there was formed a branch in like 53, run by a guy called J.W. Mitchell and a guy called Millard D. Grubbs,
Millard D. Groves,
who published the fascist newspaper called American Eagle.
When he wasn't sheriff.
Later on in the 60s, Grubbs would be the head of the National Law Enforcement Committee,
which
was the affiliate of the KKK and the National States Rights Party.
Nice. He did want to be sheriff.
Yep. Yeah.
With a name like D. Grubbs.
Yeah.
Come on.
In LA, there was a branch formed by James R. White, and there was a Pennsylvania branch formed by E.R. Barron and Frederick Polzin. New Jersey branch was led by a guy called Lawrence Sestito. But there was trouble with this because the Kentucky branch really didn't ever actually exist. The LA one they found out was the guy who led it was a former communist, although that I think was not a problem for them because communist meant Stalinist, which they supported. But the real trouble they had with the New Jersey guy, Sestito, when they recruited him, he was imprisoned for armed robbery, and then he got out and became the leader of the New Jersey chapter, but then he started hating the party for some reason and started writing to ADL about the party and saying how Madole wants to overthrow the government and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they had some trouble with him. They managed to establish contacts with a right-wing Garveyite black nationalist called Archbishop Clarence C. Addison, who was the head of the African Universal Church. So they would have some contacts with him and common meetings and so on.
So I guess we're going mid to late 60s right now?
No, this is the 50s still.
Okay.
By the way, this is the time when Justus Malins, who is active in the party and who wrote a text called Adolf Hitler an Appreciation for the Party Bulletin, is also active in a group that we mentioned before called the Real Political Institute, where he is together with Emory Burke and Ed Fields and Matt Cale.
Great cast there.
But also a Chicago group, which is maybe the same thing, maybe not, called the Institute for Biopolitics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Led by Foucault himself.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Wait, but where did I see this recently?
I don't know.
Fuck.
Are you thinking of human biodiversity? Is that what's ringing?
No.
There?
It's not. It's biopolitics specifically because it also made me laugh.
I feel like that's something that if you were like browsing through whatever these intermarium types are doing, I feel like that's a word they would throw around.
Yeah. I think, yes, it was in the Ukrainian context.
There we go.
Remember,
yes,
they kept on saying biopolitics.
Yeah.
So as I said, there were a lot of Coughlin supporters now in NRP. And at some point, Madole even said how they are the true inheritors of the Christian Front, which is funny because he was extremely anti-Christian.
Well, yes.
And I'll come to that later.
Yes.
So one of these former Coughlinites, members of the Christian Front and of the Christian mobilizers of Joe McNazee, was an Irish guy called Joseph Radden, who Goering described as a fat, moon-faced alcoholic. So he hated England. He was one of these guys. And as I said, he had this idea how they were all, the WASPs are with the Jews and they're internationalists and so on. So I mentioned Weiss and Thompson. They will have their own episode. They were kind of ideologues behind the scenes. And then there was a guy who I also mentioned called Mana Trujillo or Emmanuel Trujillo.
Yeah.
Who at some point basically became the de facto leader of the party. He was the head of their overseas department. So he took a lot of these contacts with Nazis
and became a big hippie, if I'm not mistaken. Huh?
Yeah,
that's
like
a
church. Maybe
it's a very
like peyote, right?
Yeah,
that's it.
He will have his own episode, but he's a very mysterious guy because he's very bizarre. He's very colorful, like much even more than Madole. But he's also mysterious because it's not clear, was he a communist infiltrating NRP or was he an actual Nazi infiltrating anti-fascist groups, because he worked for both and has a very weird story. So I think that there's his own episode.
Was he a guy that just needed attention?
Maybe.
Could be anything.
I mean, definitely crazy.
Yeah.
But he had a kind of a career after that.
A spiritual one.
Yes. So in 54, there was a HUAC investigation.
Heyo. He hates these people.
Shut up, Bright Eyes, and listen to me.
They're just connected in my mind.
But it basically was only a report written about the Renaissance Party and their ally Common Sense newspaper, kind of saying that they're a danger or something like that. But then later, Huak kind of denounced their own report, or renounced, I think, in some way, maybe saying that
great organization.
They took them too seriously, but the report helped the party gain new members because they published their address and kind of advertised them, so they got new members.
Maybe that was the idea.
Yeah. Well, some people think so, yes. But Madole was still scared about this, so they actually had like a uniformed section of the party, the first incarnation of it, which was called the Elite Guard. And it was disbanded because of this report, because Madole was scared that he will be accused of having a private army.
Oh my God. And we had just sewn the uniforms. We stayed up for 3 days to make these based on Kurt's sketches.
But they will be started again in a different form.
Did they have like funky sci-fi looking uniforms?
No, this is interesting. I'll tell you now. So in the 60s, there was a kind of a temporary revival of the activities of the party.
Yeah.
Because of one member called Fred Jones, I think, who was, Goering says, an aesthetic semi-bohemian ex-Marine. So he reorganized their uniform section, and it was named the Security Echelon.
Okay.
And that, I think you can see, no, this would be, I thought that Matt Cale can be seen in that uniform, but he was earlier in the Elite Guards. Matt Cale was. This is later, this is the 60s, I think maybe in 66 or something like that.
How'd it look?
Well, they had a gray shirt, which was the same kind of shirt that the Bund had. So they basically had the Bund uniform.
Okay.
So a lot
Boring.
Yeah, for real.
So, but for a lot of people, like in Yorkville, older ones, you would be like, you would see them in the street, you would be like, oh, the Bund is around again.
Yes.
And so this Fred Jones, ex-Marine, he organized them as a kind of a military unit, and that was really the only really organized part of the party. Was the Fred James organized
the gray shirts,
Security Echelon. But after some time, he resigned and became a ballet dancer.
Really?
Yes.
Well, the Marine?
What a
yes.
That's okay. My God, this is great TV. Yeah. I mean,
I would have preferred figure skater.
I agree.
But ballet,
pretty good.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wonder how it affected his like life outlook or whatever. It's a lot of fucking physical activity. At least he gets more rest. He's not up all night fucking reading about how Jews control basketball or something. He's got to be training.
I mean, Jews did control basketball at the time in the segregated leagues.
Well,
yeah.
So you ever seen Bernie Sanders shoot basketball?
Oh, right. Yeah, hell yeah. Okay.
Okay. So Martin Kerr, the Nazi, tells us in his memoirs of the NRP that Madole he was really upset when the American Nazi Party was started, because he saw them as a competition, and there was too few Nazis for two Nazi parties and so on. But in the end, Kerr tells us that the existence of ANP helped NRP recruit membership, because Rockwell was very flashy. He did the stunts and a lot of Nazi stuff in the streets, and this gained him new recruits, but also NRP new recruits, because ANP was not active in New York City. Yeah. So people who lived there and were impressed by ANP actually joined NRP.
Yeah.
And then later on, there was like people who left Rockwell and joined the National Renaissance Party. So,
yeah, including our old friend.
Which one?
Not Dave Grohl.
No.
That's for sure.
Dan Burrows.
Dan Burrows.
Yes. Dave Grohl.
I couldn't get him out of my head. Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
So sometimes, Carousel tells us that also there was some influence of Rockwell's style to NRP's activities and so on. I mean, probably, but they also kind of modeled themselves after the pre-war fascists in that area. But they did like these riots often in the street in uniforms, and Madole would give speeches and so on. And sometimes this would turn into riots. So in May 63, there was a riot in Yorkville when there was a counter demonstration of like few thousands of anti-fascists, including like Jewish war veterans who beat them up, a lot of them.
All right.
And so on. And Madole and Burroughs were both arrested at that time. And I'm not sure if this was at this or some later occasion, but at some point, some weapons were found in their cars.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if this happened now or later on, but after this Yorkville riot, Burroughs and Madole both got like 2 years of prison sentence.
Right. We covered this in the Dan Burroughs episode way back in the day. So if you want to refresh your listener, go check that out. But they did indeed find a bunch of weapons.
But Burroughs actually spent a few months in jail or prison. Madole never did. And in 1968, when Burroughs was already dead, the charges were kind of dropped or overturned. The sentence was overturned. Dan Burroughs, by the way, did we explain who he is? We had an episode on him.
He was the very depressing tale of a young Jewish neo-Nazi from New York who first became a member of the ANP, left to join Madole's group, eventually became a KKK official before shooting himself in, I think, Roy Frankenhauser's house, if I'm not mistaken.
In Pennsylvania, after his identity had been revealed.
Yes, exactly, Pretty fucked up story.
Yeah.
But check it out.
Also, allegedly, Madole had a collaboration with the KKK and addressed many of their rallies. And even had some joint marches with them. Andrej Lisanik, who was a Slovak guy who was at some point the leader of the security echelon, and Madole both got some medals from the KKK.
Interesting.
I think in the late 60s, they according to this Nazi, their main enemy in the streets became the JDL. And he says they didn't do a lot of like picketing and so on. They would do nighttime ambushes and beat the shit out of them in front of Madole's apartment / headquarters of the National Renaissance.
They were fucking intense.
So they were kind of scared of them.
Sure.
And in the 70s, they had a lot of clashes with some Maoists from the group PLP, I think called. There was a lot of clashes with them in the streets. This is the 70s. Also, National Renaissance Party managed to have a role in the bicentennial in 1976. I think I wrote something else here, but okay.
We can change the founding of the country if you want.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So they actually had a meeting in the auditorium in Virginia, which was like a historical building in connection to the bicentennial.
That's wild.
And this was like protested by many like politicians and people who were black members of the like bicentennial board or whatever. Threatened to resign and so on. But in the end, they actually had their meeting there.
Okay. Damn. Tenacious.
Yeah.
You know, I'm getting like maybe because of the ethnic composition of the group, but it's giving me vaguely bass vibes. Also, because I know they take an occult turn. A lot of Polish names or Slavic names mixed in.
Wait, so the incident you mentioned with the arsenal with Burroughs, is that the White Castle incident?
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
So there was, but I mean, I don't have. I think
I'm ready.
I mean, there's several rather fast food related battles that occur in Nazi history. in America.
This is the best part of American Nazi history.
Yeah, totally.
The Great Battle of White Castle, 1963.
Now that I think about it, I do believe we did cover it in the Dan Burroughs episode a little, but it's still a classic, so you can never hear about it too much.
So just before that, when the weapons were found, was that they were like distributing Nazi literature like at a core meeting, which is like and this is when the police found weapons in their truck and so on. So 6 NRP members were arrested and 2 ANP members as well, and they were charged for different things. But there was this also the case that Boris mentioned when they're like anti-racists were picketing a segregated White Castle restaurant, and then the NRP showed up there and there was a fight.
Yeah,
and they also got arrested and had weapons in their trunk.
Oh, okay.
Dan and James go to White Castle.
Dan and James go to White Castle. I don't know if Dan was involved in that one.
I believe he was. I think he was still around then. Yeah.
You want to say something about it?
Yeah, so I could read the headline.
Please.
July 5th, 1963.
Oh, wait.
Daily
Wait.
News.
You have to wait. Give me just 1 second. I have just the thing for this. Okay. Here we go. Wait, do this one.
Nazi punks at diner. Nab 8. 2 arsenals. 8 of the neo-Nazi bully boys who sparked a near riot in Yorkville last May when they staged an outdoor hate rally were booked last night on charges ranging from anarchy to conspiracy to incite riot when they and their National Renaissance Party injected themselves into the racially oriented White Castle diner battle in the Bronx. 2 arsenals were seized. In the truck, police found an attaché case, 2 cloth bags, and a woman's pocketbook. They contained newly purchased crossbow with a supply of steel-tipped arrows, a loaded .22 revolver, and a box of .22 cartridges.
Damn.
So this is seemingly the second time that they do the same thing, then get arrested for having weapons in their car. That's, what's the point of the weapons if you're just going to leave them in your truck and then have them take
I don't know.
I guess it looks cool when you get arrested for them.
Yeah.
I guess in the home of one man, they found 8 rifles, a shotgun, 1 sawed-off .22 rifle, a zip gun, and thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition.
What's a zip gun?
Not sure.
It's a zip gun. He zipped them.
So even though, Madole was kind of a small guy and so on, a lot of people, these are Nazis, of course, like Kerr and like James Wagner of the security echelon say how he was very brave, even reckless, that he wasn't afraid of anything. He participated in fights. Kerr says that he saw him personally punch I think a member of the JDL or one of the anti-fascist groups a few times, and then take out a knife and threaten the guy with it and so on. So so that's how they talk about him.
Yeah.
One former AMP member interviewed by the Nazi Bolton says how Madole should really be credited as the founder of American post-war Nazism.
Okay.
And it wasn't Rockwell, it was Madole.
I mean, I can kind of see
that
it,
seems
really.
to be right.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, Rockwell was more of an aberration just because of the fucking chaos and lunacy.
Yeah, the antics.
Performative moment. But this was these people had, maybe more of a long-term thought process in mind. I mean, they lasted a lot longer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So in the 60s, they also had some success in forming temporary alliances with several black nationalist groups. They held joint meetings in early 1960s in segregated meeting halls. Whites would sit on the right and blacks on the left. They agreed on that the Jews are pushing the race mixing agenda and that they should be separated, that the blacks should either go to Africa or if they stay in the America, that 2 separated political systems should be formed for blacks and whites. What Madole really fantasized here was that he will be able to recruit blacks for a kind of Yorkville Riot Part 2 and that blacks will help them take revenge on the Jews.
I see.
And beat up the JDL.
I see.
Which is
he wanted. Oh no, they're so sad.
Yes. Yes.
Can you guys come over?
I think this is the second time we see American Nazis fantasizing about black people, solving the quote unquote Jewish problem for them.
Second might even be a bit low.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly thinking about it.
Yeah. So it's interesting that they had 2 groups in the earlier days who were the closest allies. So one of them was the Christian Educational Association.
That sounds fine.
Which was the publisher of the Common Sense. But the other group that they were even closer to, although they were very close allies to both, was the American Association for the Advancement of Atheism.
All right. Early new atheists.
They published The Truth Seeker, which... let me see. It was a magazine started in 1873.
Okay.
So Common Sense, by the way, was financed by a Jewish guy, a Jewish anti-Semite, we might call him, called Benjamin H. Friedman. He's interesting because he introduced to these people the Khazar theory. He was a rich guy who thought that most Jews are not Jews, they're Turkic Khazars, and those are the bad Jews, and the few that are not Khazars are the good ones.
Okay.
And Friedman actually wanted for Madole to inherit the editorship of the Common Sense from what's his name? McGinley.
Yeah, I remember McGinley from an earlier past.
But it couldn't happen because Madole did not accept the Khazar theory.
Okay. Really?
Yes.
Well, he was just too anti-Semitic to subdivide.
I guess so. I mean, he believed in crazy things. We'll see.
This is ironic because at least 2 of his members were actually Jewish.
Yes.
At least. Yes. I think maybe 3, if I'm remembering right.
So the Truth Seeker, the atheist magazine, as I said, was started in 1873, and it stood for atheism, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, rationalism, Darwinism, social Darwinism, and anti-radicalism.
So
I want to be a Nazi.
Yes. So they distributed. Well, he's a Christian, that guy. So they distributed literature by Herbert Spencer.
Yep.
Oswald Spengler.
Yep.
George Lincoln Rockwell.
Wow. That's a fucking jump, but okay.
James Madole.
Yeah.
Richard Hofstadter and Bertrand Russell.
Okay.
Yeah, see.
All right.
So Bertrand Russell and George Lincoln Rockwell.
You know who also liked Bertrand Russell and George Lincoln Rockwell was William Luther Pierce.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
But they seemed to accept Odinism. They didn't like Christianity, but Odinism was somehow okay for them.
Okay.
So the offices of this atheist group in New York City was kind of the headquarters of the Nazi movement in New York.
Yeah.
Because the leaders of all the factions would go there and gossip and make plans and so on. And the atheists were also the financiers of the Nazi movement, including the NRP. By the way, Martin Kerr, I think it's in the context of the JDL violence, mentions how an NRP guy got his head split by an axe.
Oh, okay.
Which I was thinking, like, did I have context with Channing Ostersuch? Because this sounds like Udbat. Yeah. So
they had a Croatian member.
It was a slow day for Udbat.
Yeah.
Had to keep their head splitting skills going.
They had international contacts. I think there were international contacts by the guys in the back, like Weiss and Thompson. But then the party itself had their own international contacts. Sometimes they would print material for Nazi groups in Germany. One of the groups that they had contacts with was from Hamburg, called the Viking Youth Jugend. Dan Burroughs was in contact with them.
Not surprised. That's got hit that name.
Yeah, Dan Burroughs was an Odinist, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Because Trujillo and Burroughs were big fans of the swastika.
Yeah.
And they would try to sneak it into party publications, which Madole didn't like.
Yes.
He thought that swastika is not the best way for them to brand themselves.
This is the constant problem with neo-Nazi groups,
yes,
whether or not to use the swastika.
Well, Dan got in trouble, if I recall, with Madole's mom because Dan drew swastikas on the lampshades at headquarters.
Which is Grace's flat.
Yes.
Because all of these, Burroughs started his own zine. He was also a science fiction fan, and he started a zine to exchange for other zines, not necessarily Nazi ones even. And his zine was called the International Nazi Fascists.
The International Nazi Fascist.
Yeah,
cool. What's it about?
Okay.
I don't know about the word international there.
That sounds a little Jewish.
Yeah. I love 2/3 of your title, Dan.
So Madole thought that the Aryan peoples are the Celtic people, Nordic, Latin, Slavic, and Ugro-Finnic.
Oh, okay.
But they also admitted Mexicans, Chinese, and Japanese people.
No way.
And Madole specifically greatly admired the Chinese and Japanese people.
Diversity Nazis.
This was also why Burroughs, I think, was kicked out of the party or left the party, because he wrote or said that he wanted to drop an H-bomb on China, and Madole didn't like that.
That sounds like Dan. Yeah. He was the one that he was the one that wanted to eat the dog at the ANP and also strangled an eagle when he was in the military. Edgy.
Yeah. So there was only like 15 people in New York City who were doing actively things for the party. Out of that, only like 6 or 7 who had like some actual responsibilities.
Okay.
And then even a fewer number had fixed assignments.
Yeah.
Usually they would do things, who was around and has time would do something.
Sure.
But there were a few people who became one person departments, like Goering, the writer of the text himself, who was the student department. And there was a few things like that. Actually, Goering and Burroughs were the heads of the revived overseas department.
Heads of the what?
Revived overseas.
Revived overseas department.
Because it was Mana Truhill was the overseas department, and he was kicked out of the party. They didn't have the overseas department, and then they revived it, and Burroughs and Goering were leading it.
I'm guessing if Goering was the head of the student department, there probably weren't that many students.
No, he was the only one.
So age-wise, we're still skewing a little older, no?
Probably yes.
According to that newspaper article in 1963, Madole was 35. So I'm guessing that it was probably a lot of people around that age and older.
Probably, although he doesn't say really. He says that they politically, I think I mentioned this briefly, their recruitment efforts were targeting groups such as Young Americans for Freedom,
Young Americans,
and the John Birch's Society.
Right.
Classic.
Usually by going to their events and distributing NRP literature there, which Goering says was completely inefficient, and that the only efficient way of recruiting was hanging around those meetings and then overhearing someone say something anti-Semitic, and then approaching that person. Was the way how actually they recruited.
Oh, well, man, it's not like people made it hard for them.
Yeah.
Shit.
Like all Nazis, they were obsessed with mailing lists.
Of course.
At that time, of course. So when Madole moved back to New York City, he got a job specifically because of this in the mailroom of the America's Future, which was an ultra-conservative group, and stole some 300 names from them. In 1954, NRP got a large mailing list by establishing a front group called Patriots for McCarthy, which is probably the only reason why they established that group, is to get contact.
Sure.
At some point, Madole bragged that he got 3,000 names from a ANP defector who joined NRP. They would also sell books to make money, and these are the books they got from like friendly or friendlish diplomatic like press agencies. Like they had contacts with some Arab countries. I think like a UN diplomat from Egypt addressed one of their meetings and such things. So they would have some books published by these Arabic publishers in English, and also like a Portuguese published books that they would get for free and then sell.
You know, it's interesting. 2 years ago, I had a chance to go through this big pile of right-wing books and shit from this time period.
Is that where you dug up Muftich?
No, but it's where I found like the entire collection of Common Sense.
Right.
And then along with that was a lot of literature published by like English language presses in the Arab world. Like from Egypt, like mostly anti-Zionist texts.
That seems like...
So I'm guessing that wherever this person who had this collection got it from was probably, you know...
sounds like NRP.
NRP,
All right.
There were also a few rich supporters who would occasionally give larger sums of money for like some specific causes of the party. Madole, by the way, thought that America should, like the American economy should be based on Mussolini's Italy, not so much the Reich, but that they should adopt the Nuremberg type laws and exclude Jews, blacks, and communists from citizenship.
Communists being not Stalinists, or how's he envisioning?
Well, that's interesting. Yes. Maybe I don't know, because Goering says that they had a few ex-communists, but unlike other Nazi groups, they actually had a few members who still consider themselves communists, who were members of NRP. Of course, all of these are Stalinists, probably totally crazy Stalinists. Which, I mean, it's not these days. It's not hard to imagine.
Yeah,
you know?
It's more common these days, I think, than it was then. Yeah.
Especially because they had very anti-imperialist politics, in words at least. I will come back to that soon. So they believed, as I said, this idea that with Stalin there was a kind of establishment of a basically totalitarian fascist system in the USSR. That it was very anti-Jewish, and for this reason they supported the Soviet Union. But Madole went even further than that, so he would support different anti-American regimes across the world from kind of an anti-imperialist standpoint. So he loved Castro, Ben Bella, Sukarno, Mao, and Nasser.
Okay.
Specifically, he loved Nasser, and he considered him the leader of Arab progressivism, and Madole studied also Arab politics for this reason.
Okay.
Madole attacked the Roman Catholic Church for supporting integration or not opposing it enough and so on, which irritated a lot of his Irish membership. But Goering says that a lot of members really didn't take Madole so seriously.
Yeah.
Like that ideology wasn't that important for them. That they were that was what the leader was crazy about, but a lot of people outside of the leadership were had their own interest in things, which were quite different from that. But what they all had in common was anti-Semitism.
Sure.
That was the thing that binded them together more than any other thing. Madole, Goering says there were birchers inside of the party who thought that Madole was crazy, that he's supporting communists and so on. But they kind of agreed on the anti-Semitism stuff. But because Goering thinks that because in the Nazi movement, ideologues are rare, especially the ones who are very obsessive and have about ideas and analysis and so on.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Yeah. So for this reason, Madole was kind of respected and cherished even by the people who kind of disagreed with him.
Yeah, sure. God, they're so desperate for anyone who can write. Read.
I mean, it's true today too.
Yeah, definitely. Come on, guys, check out this new text by Madole. People fucking promote it shirtless back then too. So
Madole, we're going now into the crazier part. Madole was an occultist. He always was, since probably his days of early science fiction fandom.
Yeah.
But he kind of kept it from himself. They were occultists in the leadership of the party. But as James Wagner, the leader of the security echelon, says, they came out of the occultist closet in the late 60s and openly started writing occult texts in their National Renaissance Bulletin. And
by occult, I guess we're not talking about that intersection of Odinism and occult, but we're looking more at Satanism, or what are you talking about?
So the main influence was Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, which probably Madole got in touch with these ideas through the science fiction context and so on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
The Blavatsky was charlatan who wrote this book called The Secret Doctrine, which is the basis of Theosophy, published in 1888, claimed that she got it from a secret manuscript from an underground Himalayan monastery, and that this is the doctrine of the Theosophy. It was very racial. So they had this idea of root races,
right?
Who are like, it was kind of a racist interpretation of evolution. So the races kind of develop out of the previous one, and the aim is to achieve godhood, something like that.
Yeah.
So there was the first root race, which was a kind of proto-human astral race called, I think, Polarians or something like that. Then the second was Hyperboreans. The third ones were Lemurians, who committed the sin of race mixing.
We're calling Evola here.
Yeah, well, kind of. Although he hated Blavatsky, but he was the same kind of asshole. So Lemurians committed this sin of race mixing, which was a very bad thing. But the ones who remained pure became the Atlanteans, which was the fourth root race, and those are also the kind of masters who taught Blavatsky how to teach the fifth root race about what their destiny is and what their racial inheritance is.
Yeah.
And the fifth root race are the Aryans.
Yeah.
Specifically, not Homo sapiens, something like that, but the Aryans. And I guess the other races, quote unquote, are the product of this race mixing by the Lemurians.
Sure.
So something like that. I guess that's what's going on there. So this is like what was really adopted by Madole completely and made even more Nazi than that. So Madole was all about combining the philosophy and metaphysics of the Eastern Aryans with the science and technology of the Western Aryans.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we know these types.
Oh, yeah.
So they call, Eastern Aryans Western Aryans because they think that everything really of value in spirituality, but in like civilization, whatever building, was actually the product of Aryans. Like there's nothing really of value that wasn't made by Aryans. So they even claim that, like, Madole thought that Jewish Kabbalah had an Aryan origin from Central Asian Aryans.
Okay.
So I don't know who the Central Asian Aryans are, but they are the originators of Kabbalah.
Okay. And on the science side, are we talking like eugenics, or does he want to like teach Blavatsky to psychic naval dolphins?
I think all of like what's considered science, but also eugenics.
Okay.
And he was also very pro euthanasia and things like that. So, I mean, eugenics, basically. But, he was also all about space exploration and space colonization.
Yeah. Yep.
Very much into that.
All right.
I mean, sci-fi nerd through and through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So in the 70s, he wrote his kind of metaphysical, new agey Nazi manifesto, which was serialized in the bulletin of the party, which was called The New Atlantis, a blueprint for an Aryan Garden of Eden in North America. He wrote about how Aryans are not aware of their racial inheritance, how they were always worshipped as white gods by the other races, and so on. And he openly advocated for the caste system, like a racial caste system, which he thought was based in Vedic India, and then that was inherited by the Brahmanic India, and then by ancient Egypt, but then by the Druid Celtic Europe, then by Imperial Rome, and that fascist Italy and the Third Reich are modern incarnations of the same racial caste system.
Sure.
And you know who else? The Soviet Union. So all of this, he believed, is based in the cosmic law, of course, which will guarantee the harmony of the macrocosm and the microcosm.
Yeah, just say that casually.
Yeah.
All right.
He also believed that Plato was like important guy for this whole secret doctrine. He brought these teachings back to Europe from Egypt. Often cited by Madole are writers like Uspensky, who was kind of the inheritor of the Gurdjieff movement, then the occultist Eliphas Levi, who drew the very cool Baphomet thing, and also Aleister Crowley. He liked him as well. Madole basically had an altar in his home, which people thought was a satanic altar, which had a large picture of the Baphomet there.
Which, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think has more of a connection to sort of mystical socialism than...
I'm not sure actually what it was.
Mystical fascism.
I didn't study that. I can't say. It's cool looking.
It is.
I wrote I need a quote here, but
I'll give you one.
So
life is what you do while you're waiting to die.
There's your quote.
Yeah. So he liked Aleister Crowley also because of Aleister Crowley's social Darwinism. Mm-hmm. So this is a quote of Crowley that Madole quoted. I'm reading this from the Black Sun book. This is Crowley, as quoted by Madole. We have nothing with the outcast and the unfit. Nature's way is to weed out the weak. At present, all the strong are being damaged, and their progress hindered by the dead weight of the weak. The cant of democracy condemned. It is useless to pretend that men are equal. And so on.
Such wisdom.
Yes, it's deep thoughts, no?
Oh, yeah.
There's a hidden knowledge.
Yeah. Madole really hated the Christians. He thought that they were a Semitic heresy, alien and disruptive influence in the body of Aryan Europe.
But the Christian mobilizers.
So typical Nazi anti-Christian stuff.
Christianity is behind democracy, egalitarianism, and the nonsense ideas of anthropomorphic deities.
Okay.
Their bulletin at this point had many illustrations of Christians being thrown to the lions in ancient Rome, which they liked a lot. And he also blamed the Christians for bringing the Dark Ages of the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Also required reading for top members were books by Gerald Gardner, the founder of Wicca.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And their stormtroopers from the security echelon also got a metaphysical training.
Interesting. Well, that I'd like to sit in on.
And he saw them as the reborn Kshatriya caste, like the holy warriors kind of thing.
Okay.
Which didn't really stop them from getting their asses beat a lot.
No, and killed by the Jews.
Yeah.
It's giving me increasingly almost First Earth Battalion-y vibes the mystical stormtrooper type.
Yeah.
Do you think they were trained to bend spoons?
So they also forged good relations with the Church of Satan. Were kind of impressed by them, and also LaVey liked Madole. They would see each other relatively often and correspond often. They would meet in Madole's apartment and also in the back of the Warlock shop, or also known as the Magical Child shop, which was an occult bookstore in New York City that existed for a few decades, kind of famous in those circles. It was like the headquarters of the occulty, New Agey people of all sorts in New York City.
Okay.
And Madole was very welcome there and would obviously use the back room to meet LaVey.
Interesting.
There is a photograph of Madole giving a lecture on occult features of fascism or something like that in that shop. It's a photograph published by them in the National Renaissance Bulletin. It's interesting. It's in 1977, right at the time when Son of Sam was active, by the way. And there are people who make connections between that shop and Son of Sam. I don't know how much, because Son of Sam had some quasi-occult features to his thing.
So you're saying it was James Madole's mother?
Maybe, yeah.
It was Grace the whole time.
People say that they would see David Berkowitz, Son of Sam, in that bookstore.
Okay.
Berkowitz had an interest in Nazism and in occult stuff, allegedly, and maybe would hang out there.
All right.
For example, you know that occult guy from New York City, Peter Levenda? You know him, we mentioned him. He's the guy who had the connection with the Blink 180.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, right.
I was wondering.
All right.
He was a part of the To the Stars Academy and so on. But he wrote a lot of books about occultism and also about occult Nazism and so on.
Interesting.
He went to the same high school as David Berkowitz. He likes to say that. And he was a part of the Magical Child Warlock shop scene.
Okay.
And he was the author of the Necronomicon, one of the Necronomicons, written by the Simon, also usually called Simon Necronomicon. He's the Simon. Also, to this day, he negates that he's Simon. And he knew Madole personally and would meet him seems like he's in his apartment from what he writes. Although he says that he's kind of an anti-fascist, I guess.
Right.
Of sorts. I mean, he was also like a bishop in one of the fake Orthodox churches, which connected to, CIA people and so on.
Yeah.
A lot of things this guy was. But valuable information about Madole that I found in Peter Levenda is that Madole had a serious junk food addiction and that he would eat enormous amounts of milkshakes and ice cream.
Well, we could have probably even guessed that. Look, I mean, they had their battle at White Castle. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't at fucking, I don't know, Chez Henri or something. No. Not throwing caviar at each other. But that's fun. So we got a lot of milk in the. This is bringing milk us together with fucking
Nazis and milk.
The order, even. I bet. Man, I suddenly want to know now.
Yeah.
About the dairy.
What
ingestion.
was Madole's preferred shake?
Whole or skim?
Yeah.
I don't know if they had skim back then.
Yeah.
So this was real America. There's
butter then. Whole or butter.
By some supporters of LaVey and Madole, both sides kind of portray it like they were using each other.
Yeah.
To recruit
Everybody's
members.
So fucking smart.
Yeah. But both of them are idiots. Totally. They were like recruiting the other members and so on. Yeah. And some say how they didn't like each other, but I think they actually did. Both of course thought of themselves as like superior in the relationship.
Yeah.
LaVey thought that, Madole is a good chap and he would do anything for the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
And Madole was trying actually to recruit Church of Satan members for his party. I think he actually made some progress there. They also had a Detroit NRP guy who was called Seth Klipoth. I think it's a fake name because
of Seth.
And also Klipoth is also some Egyptian thing as well, I think.
No, that's for sure.
He was one of the leaders of the NRP in Detroit especially. And also he established his own Satanist group, which was called the Order of the Black Ram, which maybe still exists, I don't know.
Ram.
But it was like allegedly like an NRP Satanist wing. When they didn't manage to take over the Church of Satan, they made their own group.
Yeah.
And they would, publish photographs in the bulletin of Ram people and NRP people together celebrating like occult stuff. Like, I don't know.
Man, Madole's taking us on a fucking journey here.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
How did we get to this fucking warlock shop?
Yeah.
I'm guessing at this point the Irish Catholic contingent was departed.
Well, they were fucking, Vatican II cuck anyway.
I have no idea what was going on. But Martin Kerr says that, I know what was going on. I remember what Martin Kerr wrote, the commander. Number 3.
All right.
He says that it was the occult thing was. Remember, Martin Carey is an esoteric Hitlerist, but he says that the occult thing was not.
So grain of salt.
Yeah, was not popular in the party, and it was bad for the party, and that there was an exodus of old members when they started writing this shit.
It's the old 09A treatment.
Yep.
Yeah. So Carey thinks that. New York City was a bad place to have the headquarters of a Nazi party. There was not enough money there for the party, and therefore Madole had to have a 9-to-5 job all the time. I don't know what he worked. I would like to know, like what was his job.
Yeah,
White Castle.
I hope so. I hope he had to crawl back to that same White Castle.
In '76, NRP was the first Nazi group to have their own cable access TV show.
Oh,
I don't know if that's preserved.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's I guess war would follow them up.
Yeah,
how about that?
Probably many others.
What was it called? Do we know?
It doesn't say.
International Nazi Fascist Hour.
Jim's Nazi Power Hour
with Satan. Awesome. Whatever it was, I think it's probably pretty good. We should find it.
In 78, Madole was diagnosed with cancer. In 79, he died. His mother outlived him for about 2 years, I think. She wanted for someone to continue the party. But the thing is, his number 2 guy, at that time, the Slovak guy, Andrej Lisanik, already died some 11 months prior to Madole dying. He was the leader of the security echelon at the time. He was a veteran of the Czechoslovak army, as one kind of a very disciplinarian. He was a very harsh leader of the security echelon.
Okay.
But he died. He was mugged by a drunken white man, and I guess, I don't know, hit with someone to the head, and then died. This happened in New Jersey, and they found out then that he actually had a brain tumor, and this was also the cause of death. He received this blow to the head.
I'm still not ruling out Udba here.
Yeah, that would be Andrei Lisanik, who died previously. Then Grace Madole had high hopes in a French-Canadian Madole loyalist to continue the party, who was called Jean-Charles Leblanc.
That was perfect.
Jean-Charles Blois.
Try it a couple more times. I think I'll get it.
Charles Bois. Charles Bois.
There we go. That does sound convincing.
And they had a memorial for Madole.
Yeah.
Jean was there. And he got a bunch of valuable party papers from Grace about the history of the party and general party papers.
Yeah.
Had them in the car, went home, I don't know where, to Quebec or wherever.
Yeah.
And hit some concrete with his car and died immediately.
Amazing.
That's what I was hoping that was going.
Amazing.
And all the valuable party papers were scattered in the wind and lost.
This is so deeply fitting.
So probably why there's not that much written about like in-depth National Renaissance
This
Party
was
stuff.
the end of the
because
NRP.
they can't stop fucking getting killed.
I mean, that's a pretty, one after the other. No,
I'm sorry. Come on. That's what I'm saying. One after the other. That's Upa.
That's, yes.
Or God punishing them for rejecting the Irish Catholic.
No, that's yes.
I bet the Irish Catholics.
No, it was the
IRA.
Like,
I told you.
It was IRA fucking
Satanist bastards.
Yeah, like hideouts.
Well, all the politicians who in Yugoslavia died in car accidents or plane accidents, people would say that was Udba for sure.
Yeah.
So
let's continue the tradition.
Let me see. I had only a few more details to say for the end.
Damn.
So when did Grace die?
She died, I think,
82?
80 or 81 or something like that.
You know, it's interesting that she was played such a big role in this. You know, something that stands out in this story is that their early support came from these Nazi women's groups. I wonder if she had been maybe a sympathizer of some of those. That would kind of make sense.
I was
why
wondering
else
the same thing.
would this like sci-fi nerd Animist party get support of the, was it Blue Star Mothers of Pennsylvania or something?
Exactly.
Like it seems like a weird thing for them to support, unless Grace was,
I feel like Grace was really working here. I mean,
Grace wanted to get, followers for her son's little Nazi thing, and she called up the gals over at the Blue Star, and
I wonder how much Grace would have interfaced generally with like respectable types, I
don't know. But a lot of people are anti-Semites. Pretty normal. And
no, I mean kind of for the party in a way, like these early connections exactly with these Blue Star Mothers. But also I'm wondering if more mainstream figures in the community would rather interface with Grace than this fucking sci-fi nerd basement son of hers,
the Satanists.
Yeah.
James, you're not going to the Chamber of Commerce.
So Madole claimed I have three more things to say, just for the end.
Yeah.
Madole claimed that there were two attempts on his life, both by Jews. First one was in 1958 by a guy called Al Richman. He came to party headquarters, also known as Grace's apartment, around midnight on Sunday, which was when they were ending their weekly party meetings. And all false pretenses started a conversation with Madole and I guess Grace that lasted until 3 a.m. And then took out a gun and said, "I want to kill you."
Okay.
And tied up both Grace and Madole.
All right.
And then Madole says he didn't have the courage to kill us. And it was like a battle of wits. And in the end, Madole persuaded Al not to kill them. And so Al left the apartment around 6 a.m. Later, he was arrested and he shot at cops. And allegedly
Nice.
he was committed to like some kind of institution because they said he was like unstable mentally or something like that. Is what Madole says.
Okay. Well, I mean, Madole would know what unstable mentally looks like.
The other guy, this happened, I think, in the early 70s, was a guy called Edward Tournier, who also attended the meetings, chatted with Madole a lot, was interested in becoming a member, even like of security echelon.
Sure.
And then had a conversation about it with Madole and was very nervous because he said that he's like half Jewish or something like that. And then Madole told him like, well, you can't be a member. And then not only that, but security echelon people threw Tournier down the stairs in the apartment building, which made Ed very angry.
Sure.
And from that point on, he hated Madole a lot.
Yeah.
Possibly even joined some anti-fascist groups. And at some convenient point in 1 p.m. At the Wall Street area, he hit Madole with a brick to the head.
All right.
And almost killed him. Madole had a surgery. They saved his life, but he never went to a second surgery because a part of his skull was missing.
Oh.
And they were supposed to put a metal plate there, which they never did. So for the rest of his life, after that, he always wear a helmet or a hat.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no. He had a soft head and he had to wear a helmet all the time.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Well,
and he's like practicing magic.
Poor
He's
Jimothy.
got his like Nazi friends. So no wonder his mom was supportive. He was.
Yeah.
Poured a bunch of candle wax on it.
Oh, damn. Old Jimmy's got a hole in his skull. James Mahole.
James Mahole.
There it is.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out a way to work
Yeah,
that in.
he gave it to us.
And two more.
Mahole, not Mahole. I put on the helmet.
Two more details just to tie things up. Tie things up.
I think string him up.
Yes. Two more details for the end of the episode.
All right.
I think it will be interesting for the two of you.
I don't doubt it.
They're just details, but interesting details.
Yeah.
So when Ben Klassen published his classic Nature's Eternal Religion.
Yes. Beaver Theory.
Madole wrote in the party bulletin how an NRP supporter had written that book. And that book represented the essence of party's philosophy, which Madole didn't have the time to write.
Okay.
Because of all of his activities.
Sure.
So,
look, somebody already wrote the perfect
doesn't surprise
book.
me at all that Ben Klassen would be tied into this.
And the other thing is, when Madole died, according to his own wishes, he was cremated, and his remains were sent to the National Alliance headquarters in Virginia.
Okay, somebody did inherit Madole.
And not only that, William Pierce also inherited his library.
Well, you know what? There was a question that I think I wanted to ask but didn't, and that is, what was his relationship with Savitri Devi's work?
She was not mentioned in the books I read.
Interesting though, right? Because he seems like right in that fucking lane.
Yeah.
His ashes are displayed next to hers.
Yeah.
I mean, shit.
She's there as well. Huh?
Yeah. William Luther Pierce was a steward of many an ash,
but
I guess.
Isn't she? No, I think she's with Matt Cale.
Oh, did he inherit it from? We got to go back to the 70s.
I think she's in the Order, New Order compound in Milwaukee. Or
well, you know what? It's just another excuse to listen to episodes probably 71 to 80 or something. Something in there. It's been a while. All right. Damn. What a bunch of stars.
So this is like... this is more what we thought the Colombians were in a few ways.
Yeah.
They were first, and they really, really connect the pre-war Nazis with the post-war Nazis.
And it came through a sci-fi channel. It's blowing my mind.
Yes.
Damn. Yeah, this was I'm glad we got more of this. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we're hitting, I know a 3-parter's coming or a 2-parter's coming, and we have to do it because there's so much information. But this is one of those times where I'm like, bring it all. I need to know everything.
I mean, I prefer the Order of the Black Ram to anything that Cardo did.
Oh my God, yes. No, we're back in like the fun town, I like to call it.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, they are pretty pathetic, but
in a familiar way.
Yes. Yes, and they got beaten up, and even some of them killed.
Yeah. And quite a good thing to put now as we do slowly reopen the Necronomicon.
Yeah,
as we travel further into the century.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't mean this century, but the previous. The previous one. The proto-fascist century,
and the pioneers of Nazi cable access. That's right. That's an important thing.
That's no small deal. That's right. Wow. I just thought he was some dork. I had no idea.
I mean, it's an impressive group of people. Like,
for real.
They have.
That's impressive in this very antenna words.
Yes, I mean, meaning they're really
just horrible, stupid, disgusting idiots.
But they had imagine they had Homer Loomis, Eustace Mullins, Matt Cale, Dan Burrows, Seth Clipot, the Detroit Satanist. A lot of freaks.
Anton LaVey.
What's that guy's name? E.O. Prickface or something?
A.O. Titman?
Titman, there it is. Yeah. It was something like that.
Coglanites, alcoholic Coglanites.
It's not just that most Coglanites were alcoholics.
The alcoholic Coglanite splinter group.
Not to the Irish there, but I just imagine the type of people that were Coglanites.
Yeah, buddy.
Were a fan of drink.
Bundists.
Yeah.
Also famously fans of the drink.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. All meeting in Grace's apartment in Manhattan. Yes. What a time. What a time.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to these other two.
I do too. You tickled our fancy here. And you know what? Maybe we'll explain why Madole wants some communism as we go on.
Well, some racial Stalinism. Yes.
Well, tomato, Ray. All right, guys. See you later.
Bye.
Hey there, all you free people enjoying your free episodes from The Empire Never Ended. Maybe scoot on over to patreon.com/tenepod and become a patron. We publish 3 additional premium episodes there alongside the 2 freebies each month. We're on Twitter too, also at Tenepod, but our Patreon is really where it's at. See you there, maybe?
We didn't originate on this planet.